And one of the things that happens in Dignowity Hill is we actually have 5 homeless ministries in Dignowity Hill. So you can imagine it's a big conversation topic for a lot of the residents there. We have, some of the bad occurrences and then a lot of the good occurrences, but we've realized that we have to become a partner in this fight to solve homelessness. We can't just complain all the time. So we're stepping up now, and we're starting to do that. Valerie, if you'll raise your hand. So Valerie Bell is one of our newer residents, and it's not often that I bring up a topic to the residents, and they say, I want to help. So Valerie raised her hand and said, hey, I'd like to help out with this homelessness initiative. So she is the chair of our newly established homelessness subcommittee. And one thing before we get started is tonight's discussion isn't to talk about the usual topics, and we're going to have a short Q&A at the end, but mainly tonight we're going to talk about solutions. We don't want to figure out how we continue doing what we've been doing. We want to figure out what we need to do to solve homelessness and become a model city. We've seen Austin, Orlando, and Salt Lake City, and all these other cities do wondrous things. San Antonio definitely has the capacity and the skill to do the same. So without further ado, I'll introduce our panel. So we'll start off with Melody Woosley, who is the director of, actually, you know what, we're going to do this. I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves. We're going to pass the mic here tonight.
Good evening. My name is Melody Woosley. I'm the director of the Department of Human Services with the City of San Antonio.
I'm Ron Brown, Senior Manager, Outreach Manager for H.O.P.E.
My name is Gavin Rogers. I work at Christ Episcopal Church.
My name is Monty McCann. I'm a San Antonio police officer, and I'm with the H.O.P.E team, which stands for Homeless Outreach, Positive Encounters.
My name is Pastor Andey Gray. I'm the chairman at Church Under the Bridge.
My name is Bill Hubbard, and I'm the executive director for the South Alamo Meeting Lines for the Homeless.
So as you can see, can you guys hear me right now? No? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Good. So as you can see, we got a great panel of experts, a lot of people with experience with the homelessness situation in San Antonio. So we'll hopefully have a very productive conversation and not just a quick chat. So we'll actually start off with either Bill or Melody. My first question is, how many homeless individuals do we have per night in San Antonio?
The January 2016 point in time counted 2,871 homeless, either in these shelters or living in the streets. That includes about 650 residents living at the courtyard, safe outdoor sleeping area. It's called the Prospects Courtyard. We had about, breaks down to about 600 people actually on the street. Just a note, we're going to update those numbers in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from tonight at the point-in-time count. We're gearing up for another street count. This is a mandated count by the federal government to sustain our HUD funding. Another good note in terms of what's happening in the community towards homelessness, though, is that we were successful in upping our HUD funding for the first time, I don't know, Melody, 10 years, 8 years. On this last competition, we netted out about $350,000 in additional funding. So we're moving in the right direction in that direction.
And I would just add the number. The numbers that Bill is referencing, that's countywide. So that's Bexar County. It's not all. I think sometimes the perception is that it's all in the downtown area. Well, that's countywide, and we have encampments as far out as 1604 and in the unincorporated areas of Bexar County.
So when we talk about that homelessness and that 650 number, how many of that is chronically homeless?
I can answer that. As of November 15th, which is the most current number I have coming out of the service providers maintain a database called the Homeless Management Information System. And we had 418 chronically homeless in the community, both between the Haven Park facilities and the street.
And I think, do you want to talk about what chronically homeless, how that's defined?
Go ahead.
So really, chronically homeless is when you have someone who is not just that they're living on the street, but that they've been homeless for a period of time consecutively and really have become entrenched in homelessness. And it's that much harder to provide services and do outreach to them. A lot of times they're either severely mentally ill or they're suffering from addiction challenges. And so that population, that's really a goal for us for 2017, is to really impact that population. And that's the population that is the vision that you have in your head of the homeless, and also the population that is very, very expensive to a community in use of medical services and police services and the cleanup that is needed sometimes. And so it's a strong focus because their lifespan is shortened by homelessness. They're the most vulnerable homeless, and so they're the homeless that we prioritize our assistance to, because it's a matter really of saving their lives.
Did you include the fact that the definition includes being disabled or having a family member disabled to qualify for homelessness? And when we say disabled, that also includes individuals who have substance abuse problems, which I'm sure you've seen throughout the community. So it's not just a physical disability, it also includes substance abuse and mental health issues.
So when we talk about the caretaking of homeless individuals here in San Antonio, is there a dollar amount that you can allocate specifically to chronic homeless individuals that we spend per month or per year or anything like that? They actually show, because I'm sure there's some folks that they don't really care about. I mean, they live out and about, and they don't really live around the issues that we live around. So the issues of person-to-person contact doesn't affect them. But if they hear a dollar amount of their tax dollars going somewhere, it might mean a little more. And don't let me eliminate the rest of the panel. If you guys, please raise your hand.
Well, I can give you a national average number. The national average is $40,000 a year to maintain a homeless individual, either in shelter or on the street. There are some local studies that Melanie wanted to mention later in the conversation that have just been completed that the numbers in terms of individuals who are high utilizers, and that might not be just homeless, but highly utilizers of jail services and healthcare services is enormous. I'm going to give this to Ann.
Spread the will.
Brian, I wanted to tap in on, you said that individuals out and about might not be affected by homelessness, but me and my team, we are out at 151 Petranco, 1604, and 1604 and Blanco, 281 and 1604. There's encampment everywhere. People are all over our city, and they're moving out further and further within our county, and we do provide services for these individuals at H.O.P.E. Our outreach team, we try our best to allow individuals to feel like there is a little hope, there is someone out there looking out for us. So hygiene, undergarments, whatever they might need, we provide for them. Food, bus passes. So those dollars are being stretched out all over the county.
Well, first and foremost, you look at your first responders and your emergency parents. You're not obviously going to be the top dollar figure right there. From a police department perspective, usually a chronic homeless person is going to come in contact with the police department probably, depending on whatever their substance abuse situation is. It'll be 2 or 3 times a week. Fire and EMS easily once a month. And to give you perspective of that, we've been looking into these numbers. Just a call out, just for a fire truck to come out with a paramedic and check on it, you're looking at about $500 per trip. And if they have transport, get an ambulance out there, we're looking at $1,500 to $2,000 a time. We have a gentleman that we've been engaged with from a homeless outreach perspective for since about May, June timeframe. So we've been able to get him off the street for about 4 months. And prior to that, we looked back and looked at his involvement with the emergency services for a 12-month period. He probably cost in the neighborhood of $40,000 to $50,000. One person. Since our contact with him, getting him into services, he was only contacted for emergency services 2 times. So that's a significant number. We spend a lot of time, my partner and I, it's just us, it's the one team that's out there. Sometimes we spend a lot of time with working with an individual, which from our peer group, we get a little bit of criticism for, because the normal law enforcement attitude is get it done, get it done. We've got calls, hold them backed up. We've got things you got to do. And so we spend a lot of time with an individual because we see the light at the end of the tunnel. We see the cost savings of if I spend 2 or 3 weeks, engaging with this person and taking them to clinics, getting them to a service provider, doing that transportation for them, walking them through all of those processes, they just are overwhelming to that individual. The amount of man hours that my partner and I spend on that person is paid off the dividends of getting them out of being a high utilizer category.
To add on to what Monty is saying, building a relationship is very important with helping someone get off the streets, and just swinging by, dropping something off, that's good. When I first started with Haven, they said, Mr. Brown, that's fine and well. We get food and whatnot, but I need a little bit more than food. And what they really are looking for is someone to talk to, someone that can relate to them, to help them deal with some of the issues that they're having, in this cycle of homelessness. And building that relationship and spending time with them does wonders. I'm so glad that we don't operate by numbers. We operate by relationships at Haven for Hope. And we spend a lot of time out there doing exactly what Monty is doing. Sitting on the curbside, taking them to lunch, spending time with them, getting to know them so that they can feel like they can trust us to hand their lives over to us so that they can get some help.
So while we're talking about actually reaching these folks and getting them treatment and creating those relationships, it seems like when they're in a transient state, that's really difficult. You have to chase somebody on the bridge. It's not the most ideal situation when you're chasing around 650 individuals. Gavin, I'm going to ask you about this, as you've kind of spoken a little bit about this, but Housing First initiatives, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think it's great. I think that one of the key issues is, and Martin Luther King said this when he was talking about poverty, he said, the programs in the past all have a common failing. They are indirect. Each seeks to solve poverty by first solving something else. And I think a lot of the programs we have done a really good job in San Antonio. I think even Haven for Hope has done a very good job serving a specific population that can be affected. But there is a big group out there, maybe 650, what the number is, that need to be treated differently. And I think the Housing First model is key. Actually, I think the key of solving homelessness is a key. But to speak about relationships, and this is probably the most important thing as a pastor, and the other pastor here can talk about this, is I believe the best way to really begin to treat homelessness in San Antonio is by relationship. And that does not, and not put all responsibility on the city or Haven for Hope. When I did a journey where I lived on the streets of San Antonio for about 40-something days in 2012, it changed my life. And the one thing I learned is we are failing, our citizens are failing the homeless by the way we treat them. That means everybody in this room and on this panel. We have great services all over the place, from Haven to Hope to CAM. Trinity University calls that level 2 or 3 trauma care, right? Level 1 trauma care is a basic human relationship between the citizens of San Antonio. And we are failing there by the way we treat them on the streets, by the way we limit them or relocate them continually, and by the way we even sometimes do charities. So I really believe to push us over that edge, you know, this number that we're getting closer to, is we're going to have to have a really good understanding of how we as citizens treat our friends. And they are my friends. So I think everybody does that differently, but I think the citizens need to take more of a responsibility to understand that they also have a role in eliminating homelessness. You know, Martin Luther King says, power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. And I really believe that. I think we have to understand really what it means to love our unhoused neighbors. And that's just my thoughts. And I think Housing First is a great initiative. I really think that it will put people in houses that need a house more than sometimes they need treatment. And maybe they get treatment later, but let's put people in houses first so they can have a clean shower, they can go to the restroom, that they can have services there that any human should have. So I think the Housing First model, and I think there's cities and states around this nation that are a good example of that. And I hope our city can learn to take that approach more and more each year. So.
I'd like Melody to address this in the city of San Antonio.
Absolutely, and then I think Bill can add on to it. So, I mean, I would say we agree that permanent housing is absolutely the ultimate goal of homelessness efforts and solving homelessness. We, you know, in the city, even Haven for Hope, there are a number of examples of where Housing First is happening. And that phrase is interchanged a lot with permanent housing, permanent supportive housing, whatever the kind of permanent housing where an individual has a lease and they don't have a time limit on staying there. And so, you know, there have been a number of efforts recently to expand the availability of permanent supportive housing for the homeless. And the increase in federal funding that we've just received that Bill mentioned earlier, that's a direct result of us working very diligently to increase the supply of permanent housing in the community. And the additional dollars that we received are for permanent housing. So there are a number of efforts, and we continue to expand that. This week, Bexar County hosted a strategic planning session, a charrette. We had a national consultant come in and help the community and stakeholders work on a strategic plan that focused in large part on Housing First. And this same agency or consultant is working with us on a gap analysis to look at the availability of shelter and permanent housing and mix of services for the homeless, and to help us make some decisions around what that mix maybe should look like and if there need to be changes. And so it's absolutely something that the community is engaged in. Bill, do you have anything you want to add?
I think you covered it very well.
So when we talk about Housing First, from a neighborhood association perspective, I always have in the back of my mind is that factor of NIMBYism, not in my backyard. You know, we have this a lot with halfway houses when they're developed, about, you know, and it's not about political, you know, candidates running against this. It's about a community that's telling their political candidate, I don't want this in my, and especially for the east side. So we had a big tip with Crosspoint, I think it was back in 2010. You know, nobody wanted another halfway house on the east side because we were already, you know, we thought we were doing our due diligence. When it comes to a Housing First perspective, is there any way that you can assist communities that are willing to embrace this Housing First initiative, or how does that work? And this goes for
Bill, Melody, anybody?
Okay, so Ron, Bill, and I, we've been the last 2 days at the charrette, and this is the topic of discussion, is the main one. And this is an interesting opportunity for me right here sitting in front of y'all. First of all, it's my first opportunity for this. So it's education. It's education on our part, it's education on your part. It's recognizing that there are 100 individuals in this room, and each individual is having a unique experience right in this moment. And that's the exact same thing that's going on in the streets of San Antonio right now. You've got 418 chronic homeless that are having a unique experience in and of itself right at this moment. And they have a unique story as to why they're there. So this is a community issue. I'm going to call it a problem, it's an issue. And the result is a community solution. So the not in my backyard mentality has got to go. It's just the bottom line. And it doesn't matter where in the city we're talking about, because it's a community issue and it's going to require a community solution and a community partnership. Housing First is a kind of a label and a catchphrase right now, I feel, because we have not truly implemented it yet. And that's what today was, in the last couple of days, we've been talking about planning. We're ready to put that plan into action. So, with having people go into the housing, it's not just that. I want to be very clear with that. It is a long-term plan as a resolution. There's a lot of follow-up services that go in that are involved with it. Because we don't want to have unrealistic expectations on the people that have been placed into the housing. A lot of them, I know, I've been a police officer for 23 years, and I tell this story to a lot of people there. My very first call on my own, coming out of the substation off of Frio Street, was for a gentleman by the name of Craig. And to this day, through homeless outreach, I am still engaged with Craig and trying to get him off the streets. He's still dealing with his addictions and the demons that plague him. So, this is not a race. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
I think one thing you said is not my backyard, and that's said in various different ways when you don't want something in your neighborhood. But and when it comes to homelessness, I think it's misunderstanding sometimes the homeless person. One thing I learned is that in my time spending at Haven Courtyard, I spent maybe 25 days there as I don't know what you call it, a prospect. And if I tape recorded a conversation there and took out all the names and the identifiers of where you're at, and then I went to, let's say, I don't want to be mean, like the Alma Heights football game in like the nicest section with all the parents, right? And I tape recorded that, and I took out the names, and I replayed it. You wouldn't be able to tell you were at Prospects Courtyard or you're at Alma Heights football game, because we all have problems. We all deal with struggles of love and insecurity and jobs, and so therefore we all have the same problems. And if we start seeing each other as equals, as a common humanity, then that's going to push us over the edge to understand and not have a fear of different ministries in your backyard or different programs maybe that are spread around the city. I think a lot of people just want the downtown area to handle all the issues, and but really we need to work with homelessness all over the city, from, like you said, 1604 down to the far south side. So,
Andy, I see you leaning forward. Yeah.
I think that one of the things that when we talk about, not in my backyard and all those kind of things, is that it presents an awesome opportunity also for us. And not only does it present its own set of challenges, but it presents an equal, if not greater, opportunity. And that is to see and be part of something that allows us to affect another individual in a way that we didn't think is possible. And for better or for worse, when we get outside of our comfort zones and we get out of the places that we're comfortable, are for and no more. And I'm not preaching here. I'm just saying this is what I've learned in all the time I've been at Church Under the Bridge, is that when we get out there, we begin to understand just what he said, that there's the only difference really besides us and the conversations is that, and as Officer Monty and I were talking, is these people are in survival mode. A lot of them are in survival mode. We don't know what we can do or what can become of them with, one, the right relationship. And maybe it takes more than one, and it will take more than one. And then two, try to get them out of survival mode when they're not worried about what the next meal they're going to get is going to come from, or where they're going to find the night's warmth, and all of those things. So I just wanted to encourage and say, yeah, it has its challenges, but the rewards are out of this world. And just because it is a challenge doesn't mean that it's not something that we should meet head on and endeavor to do. Jesus had said, the poor you have with you always. So then, therefore, it's how we handle the poor that we have with us always that really separates us.
Rob?
Many parts, one body. This body can't function without toes, can't walk the way I need to walk without them. Everybody got a part. And we got to get over the boundaries and the back patting and all of that stuff and put our special pride to the side and start working together. The sooner we start working together, the quicker we can resolve the big issue, and that's a lot of these brothers and sisters out there on the streets that really need help, and they crying out for us to help them, and we just been walking by them. They are a vital part. Some of the, like you said, some of the best people that I've met here in San Antonio since I moved here from Chicago have been homeless people, and some of these people have some of the greatest gifts that they can offer our society, and we're not tapping into them just because of the way they look, because of the way they might smell, the way they present themselves. If you just take the time to just tap into what's inside of that chest, that heart, find out what they got going on inside, you'll realize that these individuals are no different from you or I.
So when we talk about utilizing, and either one of y'all can hold on to it. When we talk about, that could go on to 3 different tangents, but I'll go on to this one now. So when we talk about creating these relationships and actually tapping into these people, when you mention 650 countywide, I think about how many churches we have in Bexar County. And I wonder, we got a few mega churches. And I wonder if some of these mega churches, and I appreciate the food pantries, I appreciate the blanket drives, but if they could actually save some lives. I mean, this Housing First initiative, we could start with our churches. We've got a couple churches that get tax dollars, and they won't even, assist us as a neighborhood association with free event. I just want a table, man. I don't want the food or anything. I'll provide the water. So at the end of the day, I'm wondering if we could, is it too far-fetched to have some of these big churches, even some of the smaller churches, foster one homeless individual, or the bigger churches, just give me 5. Just take 5. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that the church could have a much bigger role in solving homelessness beyond some of the normal services that they always seem to do. When I talk to churches about providing housing, I hear the phrase all the time recently that the church is not into the housing business. From churches that are just afraid to engage this. And I would just tell them to read the Bible, that the church is in the housing business all throughout the Old Testament, the New Testament. I think that the church can take an active role into providing good housing for those in need, especially the ones that they have relationships with. If you said it's divided up, that number is doable. Solving this number is doable, and we all know this. We all see this. We all might believe in how it's going to be happening in different ways, but it's a doable thing, and the church needs to understand that they are just not a side charity, that they are an active part of this community, and they can engage the city in very active ways and not be afraid to do something as crazy as provide housing for the homeless. And that's my hope. I hope they can really understand that and really take a biblical approach to solving homelessness.
And it's not just homelessness. You know, one of the things that I would like to be able to do, and Brian and I talked about this a little bit, one of the things that we'd like to be able to do is I'd like to see the church get into some areas that exceed just homelessness. Like, how about trying to find some people jobs? You know, how about trying to have somebody in their congregation or someone that can put them to work, you know, mowing yards or working at we're blessed that one of our board members at Cub owns a lot of the Little Caesars. And he puts a list up every week of the job openings at all the Little Caesars throughout town. And the guys can come by and look at it. It's got the name of the manager and their phone number, and they can call and try to get in and get an interview. These are the kind of things, and even more, that I'd like to be able to do. I was telling Brian about a gentleman that came to me, and he sat with me and said that he had moved from Chicago, kind of a friend there maybe, from your area, Ron. And he came down here and he couldn't get a job. And he couldn't get a job because when he was 18 years old, he did something and spent 7 years in prison. He's 55 years old, and he said, I come here and I can't get a job because when people ask on the application, if I ever been I committed a felony, I have to answer that and say yes. He said, Pastor, I'm not even the same guy I was when I was 18 years old. There are things as a church, there are things as a community that we can do, and we can do it and make an impact in these people's lives and in our lives too. They're not only going to be the ones that benefit from this. And I think that I'm not so obtuse to believe that the way that people are impacted and people are changed is, as a pastor, we give them the gospel and love on them. But it's one relationship at a time and one day at a time. One of the things I love to hear is someone coming in and talk to me, and the next thing I know, they're hanging out and they've gone from calling me pastor to calling me dad. And that's kind of funny, but I was like, well, that's weird, but I get to understand that that's a term of endearment. And it's that relationship, and I want to see the church do more than what we do. Maybe we have a group that we work with day labor or something to try to get these folks and pay them every day. There's got to be a way that we as a church can be involved and do the things that we should be doing, and not just necessarily counting on the community to do its things, but if we as a faith community can do that, that would make a whole big difference and an enormous difference in people's lives and our own. And we might see things change, and it wouldn't be like Gandhi, which says, you know, that I love your Jesus, but your Christians not so much.
So we've got an incredible faith-based community here in our community. And really what we're talking about here is having conversations amongst each other. And not two-dimensional conversations, three-dimensional conversations. It's not just about, you know, they're homeless and we're talking about homes, but that's not it. They have lost their executive skills to do many of the tasks that we take for granted. So help is a very general, broad term. You know, we can stick somebody in a house, but when's the last time they paid the bills? When's the last time they had to get, you know, a scrub and to clean their floors or their sinks, or to take care of the food that they've had to make sure it doesn't spoil? So there's a lot of teaching that needs to go along with the housing. So, you know, in my travels across this city, there's lots of churches. Those are buildings, those are properties that, you know, get used on Sunday, Wednesday nights, here and there in the daytime mainly. But those are great opportunities to have satellite programs that are able to benefit this community. So, you know, maybe even some of the larger churches, if they want to open up their gymnasiums or their larger meeting rooms to have, you know, families or teenagers or, you know, any kind of different segment of this population where, you know, they can crash out on the floor, you know, this many nights out of the week, and the people in that area know they have a safe place to go to, out of the elements. You know, each individual church may not be able to do everything, but they can pick one thing and do it extremely well. And if we have a coordinated effort throughout the community, throughout the faith-based community, of doing these efforts and doing these things really well, we can wipe this issue out.
And just to add to that, and I really appreciate the comments, because one of the things during the last budget process, City Council actually initiated the creation of a faith-based initiative in the city and added a position of faith-based liaison. We're in the process of hiring that position. We'll have someone on board next month. And she will be tasked with doing exactly what you all are talking about, and that's, coordinating between local government, between nonprofits and faith-based organizations to harness the resources of the churches, and not just to address homelessness, but really to address issues of human services and to improve the leveraging of those resources between all of the organizations that are putting time and dollars and effort into addressing homelessness, domestic violence, crimes against children. So really, I think these ideas are very appropriate, and homelessness is sort of an obvious first starting place for this role. So that's very helpful.
I wanted to add to the conversation with some systems changes that are coming to San Antonio, being sponsored through the South Alamo Regional Alliance for the Homeless, which we call SARA. So I'll spare you that long title, and we'll just refer to it as SARA. One of the initiatives that has shown nationwide to be a success, in conjunction with a lot of other things like Housing First, is an initiative called Coordinated Entry. And that system just kicked off in San Antonio in June, and we're in a pilot phase. It primarily involves currently about 5 of the major service providers, including the Haven. And what that system does is it gives a upfront assessment for an individual or family that is homeless, and then recommends it to the best provider of services that fits their need. The client has choice. If there's more than one opportunity for a service provider, they can choose their provider. When coupled with Housing First, and we talked about this in the charrette for the last 2 days at length, it's had dramatic impact on particularly chronic homeless individuals who have been on the street for years and years. An example, a statistic from Houston, our neighbor to the south, they had 5,000 chronic homeless individuals, primarily living in the downtown area around the baseball parks that are downtown. They've reduced that 5,000 figure to less than 500 over the last 60 months. Now, we are looking closely at that model in Houston. They've done a lot of things right over there with the homeless population. They've aligned their resources. The service providers are aligning their resources. And when I say service providers, I mean agencies that are focused on providing homeless individuals services. So that's their business, case management and housing. I think we could affect that same model, and if we brought the power of the faith-based community into that coordinated entry process and incorporated into the system properly, you would be, I would be out of a job in a very short time. Now, I'm not necessarily looking for that, but I mean, I'd love to be in that situation to go and tell Melody's, upper management, the city council or the county commissioners, that we've cut homelessness on the street to 0. And that's our objective in this community, amongst the service providers that are affiliated with the coordinated entry and SARA. So that's a solution that's on its way. Adding this new relatively, I just thought about this with Brian when we met to get ready for this presentation. And luckily, over the last 2 days, I've been making some contacts with the faith-based community. And I think our organization is a perfect facilitator in conjunction with our current partnership with the other partners, including
the Haven and the city and the county to try to make this work. And I'd love to see it work in your neighborhood. I mean, we have to start it small. If we had a small location, geographical area that has success in this area, I guarantee you there's other neighborhoods that feel just as passionately about you, about their quality of life, and for our friends who are homeless.
So when we talk about coordinated entry, there's a big word there, coordinated. What we've seen as neighborhood residents is somewhat of a silo effect, and that's just in our little neighborhood. There's a silo effect among ministries that don't really communicate among each other that well. I'm not saying they don't talk to each other, but it seems like there should be a stronger coalition among them. What is your view from a city perspective or county perspective on that silo effect? Is that something that we're just imagining, or is that something that we actually need to address and fix?
If I could just quickly comment on that before Mel says it. We don't have silo effect just in the faith-based community. We have silo effects in the entire service delivery community. And a lot of it's driven by resources and funding streams. One of the challenges that Sarah's facing is trying to align those services and having a collaboration rather than a silo effect. And we're making some good inroad, and I'll give you the example of our veteran initiative where we had an entire community come together and work towards reducing the veteran homeless population. And Mel can correct my numbers, but I think in January of 2015 we had 1,600 plus. We're now down under 300. We used, a variety of techniques and services, and, corporate support, coordinated entry support, cross collaboration between healthcare community and service providers for the homeless. That's the kind of model I think that we can implement, and if you add the faith-based, I just can't imagine the power of that coalition. Sorry, Mel.
No, I think that's a good way to respond to that. It is a matter of coordination, and I would say actually I work in a lot of areas in the early childhood arena and senior services. Our department does a lot of works with a lot of different populations. I would say the homeless coordination is probably the best one that we have. In large part, I think, because the federal government mandates that we have this continuum of care and requires anyone that's receiving federal funding to be part of this system. And that's pretty uncommon. You don't see that with other federal funding. And so because of that, we do have agencies that work together very well. The silos occur in exactly the reason Bill said, because there's a lot of different funding sources, there's competition for funds and resources, but because we do have this continuum of care that serves as a backbone organization, really, we're a lot farther along, and really in the mental health arena, we're coordinated very well. It feels messy sometimes. It does seem like it's siloed, but I would say the coordination is above average. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, the Boston Globe actually profiled the San Antonio community, their spotlight group, their spotlight reporters on our mental health system, and showed that it's really one of the best practices in the country, and that's due to our county, it's due to San Antonio Police Department's efforts around mental health training for the officers, and so yeah, I would say we are doing really well, but I understand the perception of silos. But the Veterans Group was a great example of how we can create a working coalition. We've housed almost 2,000 veterans who were homeless, and that's in permanent housing, that's not shelter, and so we've accomplished quite a bit there.
Yeah, I tell you, my frustration level went way down since the first day of being doing outreach for Haven for Hope. I was the only one, and it did get frustrating to try to get some services and some connections and all of this stuff. But now it is much easier. It's a lot lighter. It's not a burden. is flowing. People are getting it. Organizations are getting it. And it's truly eye-opening to see this happening, because we can put an even bigger dent. The more we work together, the more we can resolve. So, yeah, it's been pleasant working as of late.
EW3? No? Okay. So the next question I have is actually regarding the veterans homelessness. So when we were walking around talking to folks about the veterans homelessness initiative that we just had done, a lot of the folks came back and said it's eliminated. So apparently there's some skepticism over, yeah. So I'm gonna let y'all explain that and talk about that so you can tell everybody now.
Well, really, a lot of that is in definition, and so it was the mayor's challenge to end veteran homelessness, and the idea is to effectively end veterans homelessness, and what that means is that homelessness among veterans is rare, brief, and non-recurring. It doesn't mean that you have zero homeless veterans, and really, potentially there's not a finish line, because there are new veterans that are coming into the system daily. And the idea is that we have a system in place where we can rapidly house veterans as they become homeless, or if they, homelessness recurs, then we have the systems in place to either prevent that, ideally, or to very rapidly get them back into a permanent housing situation. And so there still are homeless veterans, and there will be homeless veterans, but we are, the feds set 4 goals, really, and that's, based on how long it takes you to house a veteran, how long, or how many days it takes you to house a veteran, and how many veterans there are homeless compared to how many that you've housed. We're still meeting the goals of that, and so we've always been very clear about that we have met the goals of the federal government and effectively ended veteran homelessness, and we did that with a number of partners, including really Sarah and Haven for Hope and Sam Ministries and the National GI Forum, Family Endeavors, and even our corporate partners, USAA was instrumental in helping us do that. And so we can, even though we had our press conference and we declared that we had effectively ended veteran homelessness, we still work on it every single day, and so do all of the partners. And so, like I said, there's no finish line. We're going to keep at it, but we absolutely have impacted veteran homelessness tremendously.
Just an add-on to that, statistics show that we were getting about 50 new veterans identified every month in our community that were not previously identified as homeless. So this is a continuing effort to sustain the gains we've made over the last 2 years and pay attention to the details and the objective of the Sarah staff, not an objective that their executive director forced on them, but one they see as achievable, is that no veteran will spend more than 72 hours on the street, and we will eventually go to 0 veterans in the homeless state. So that's an objective that they're working very, very hard every day and looking for partners to help us accomplish that. So if you've got an interest in a veteran issue and a veteran homelessness issue, we'd love to talk to you.
I'd like to just affirm what has been said to this point, being Ron and I being the boots on the ground out there engaged with the veterans. It really is a day in, day out thing. I mean, we're a tourist town, we're a military city. I mean, we are constantly having people coming in by planes, trains, and automobiles, and even on foot. I think the important thing to take from it is the fact of our commitment. The commitment level of all of the services and service providers, that we are constantly staying engaged. When you're talking about homelessness, you've got several different systems in place where you are addressing needs. You're putting them into shelters to get them an emergent situation right then, and then you're going into transitional living to get them from a shelter to a permanent solution. So we are constantly engaged in that, constantly engaged with these people. A lot of times, the juggling act, or a lot of times, I don't know, Ron, how do you feel? Sometimes I feel like I'm that guy on stage with all the plates spinning, and I'm running back and forth, keeping them going, because we get them engaged, and we get people, the veterans, attached and connected to Family Endeavors, GI Forum, the VA, whichever the case may be, the Audie Murphy or Tejada, whatever the case. And we get them started, and we get it rolling, and we stay in constant communication with the provider, and we're just waiting for that phone call to say, we've got the spot, go get them. Now we got to go back and find them. So we're staying engaged with our providers, and then we're trying to stay engaged with our clients, and trying to keep them matched up so that once we know, hey, take them to apartment so-and-so at this location, we can go get them and say, let's go.
And thank you, Melody, for answering that. I don't mean to put you on the spot. So, but we're here to shut down rumors too. So, so how important is our education system when it comes to homelessness in San Antonio? What role do they currently play, and what role do you each wish they would play? And I know our school districts are very poor right now, so don't get me thinking I'm putting something else on them. But I'd like to know, what role do they play in solving this issue?
One of the things that I have been thinking about and wanting to do is to go in to the high schools and just do a presentation on choices. You know, a lot of young individuals make a lot of bad choices, and they think that, oh, they know it all, but giving them some visual to understand that some of the choices that you're about to make can land you into a situation such as this is eye-opening to them. So, like, giving them the education on choices that you make can land you into homelessness, and you can be living in a situation like this by not being defiant, listen, respect, treat people with dignity, things of this nature. Just giving them an education on some of the choices that they make can be detrimental to their lifestyle and what they're doing. So that's one of the things that I've been wanting to do, is to get out into the high schools and talk to some of the juniors and seniors about choices.
We partner with the San Antonio Independent School District pretty closely in terms of looking at statistics of homeless children. The HUD definition of youth runs 18 to 24, which is kind of counterintuitive when you realize that most high school kids are younger than 18. But we do have a significant student homeless population, at least at San Antonio ISD. Recent statistics that we gathered for a youth HUD grant indicated there's well over 600 during the year that are unaccompanied. That means they are not accompanied with an adult under the age 18 and enrolled in the San Antonio Independent School District. There are literally hundreds more of students couch surfing amongst family members or friends. The youth problem, the profiles that we're starting to look at in our community are really kind of scary. And I will tell you that in that 650, we may have, I think our youth count last year at the January pit count was 11. So we were able to find 11 kids on the street that night, unaccompanied by adults, that self-identified as homeless. But in the rolls and the statistics that are kept by the McKinney-Vento, which is a legislation that requires school districts to maintain statistics and to identify homeless kids, there was over 600. Well, factor into the fact that Alamo Heights also reported, we were able to gather that, they reported 0. Southside had a fairly decent count. Northeast and Northwest had hundreds of kids. So, we've got a hidden youth population out there that really needs to be addressed, because this is the next generation, as I've been repeatedly reminded by my McKinney-Vento liaison friends. This is our next generation of chronic homeless individuals. These kids are being sex trafficked. They're very resilient in terms of trying to survive. Met a young lady that had been released from the Bexar County Jail. I don't want to get into a lot of anecdotes, but this is a horrendous story. She had been abused from the age of 11 by family members. At age 14, a pimp turned her out on the street and wouldn't allow her to use contraceptives, so she has 5 children. She's getting out of jail and going through the reentry, Bexar County Reentry Center with 5 children at age 24. The oldest kid is 14. No skills, no support. We're trying. Sam Ministries put her in their family dorm and are trying to get her stabilized. The only asset she had was the dress on her back. And the 5 children were clean, beautiful kids. You probably, if you saw them on the street, would never imagine they were coming out of that environment. But that's not a particularly unusual story to hear as people are coming through. And what's happening to our youth is they get exposed in these situations to additional drugs, the abuse they occur, and there's a distinct population that are being thrown out of their homes, rejected by their families, for 2 reasons that I'm aware of, 2 primary reasons. Their sexual orientation, or if they get pregnant. I have 2 children of my own. I can't imagine ever telling them they wouldn't be welcome in my home, but that happens regularly. The other reason I hear is because the family cannot afford to take care of the older children, so they tell them to go take care of themselves, because that's what happened to the parent. I think Andey has a whole crew of these kids that come by and see my friend Diane Talbert on a regular basis. There's 25 or 30 kids that you feed every day over there that have been rejected or have somehow fallen into homelessness. So when you say how important is education community, I think they're struggling with solutions. I think we need to do a better job of profiling what that population is and looking for solutions. That's going to be a big issue, I think, by facing us down the road.
I've cheated on this. My daughter is in NHS, and I've invited the school down to Church Under the Bridge to help serve. And then I will purposely have them go out among the congregation, and with a pitcher of tea or Kool-Aid or something like that to refill cups. And I've already talked to some of these folks to get them to catch some of these young ladies and young men and set them down and talk to them and let them ask them questions and find out, just so what Ron was saying, so that they understand, hey, this idea that you're bulletproof and it'll never happen to you, it can happen to you, and let's listen to somebody who can tell you about it. So I like it. I mean, if we can catch them before they get to be out on the streets, that's our best chance of an intervention and changing what's going on, so they don't fall into that place, and get them around. And some of it's just, hey, come out here, let's look, and let's let you see somebody, and talk to someone that's walking this, and maybe they can tell you a different way to go than the way that you think you should go.
So, as far as the school system and where they fit into this puzzle, and I guess my personal feelings on what I would like to see them, not necessarily, I don't like to call it stepping up to the plate, but I think I would like them to reconsider is every school has your school counselor. Does anybody remember going to your school counselor for counseling? Does anybody ever remember going to their school counselor for any kind of social advice or direction or services? Exactly. I mean, I didn't even know who mine was, and half the time if you were going to them, it was for you changed your classes. It was for academic scheduling or planning for going to college or whatever. So my take on it is, as far as the school district's place in this equation, or their role, I would like to see kind of discussed and maybe revamped, is let the school counselor be a counselor. You know, if they have training on social work or I say case management, but if they are more aware of the resources that are available to them through Sarah, through the Haven for Hope, through the different network providers, if they have a resource guide that they're tapped into, then they are a resource to these children. And then, and then creating that environment like that where these children feel comfortable coming to, they know that they, first of all, school is supposed to be a place of safety. It's supposed to be a place of knowledge. So why are we not spreading that knowledge and having that knowledge afforded to them through the resource of the counseling department within each school?
And Bill, you guys help me. One of the things I remember hearing from the pit count that was done at H.O.P.E was, you know, there was a worry that if they identified themselves as homeless or if they were in a car or something like that, that they were going to be taken away from their family. There's got to be a way that we can do something that's going to help keep that family unit together so that they'll identify, so that we can get them before it gets too far. Because if they don't want to tell us, because they're afraid that what little family unit they have is going to be disbanded, it's counterintuitive and it works against us.
Can I tap in on that? You know, we're out all over the county, like I said. It used to be one, now it's 5 of us. 3 of us, we work the 1604 area, and we engage with families at Walmart that you wouldn't believe, living in their cars, living in their vans. And that's one of their barriers is, I don't want to lose my family unit. I don't want to, you know, go where you want me to go because they're going to take my kids away from me. And what we have been informing them that is that when you come over to Haven, if you give us a little, and it takes weeks to just get them to consider coming. But when we offer this service, we let them know that it's just a procedure. When you go over and go into intake, your child is not going to be necessarily taken away from you. We're trying to keep you together. So they have to let the agency know that, hey, got this family, and it's like an alert. You know, okay, so if you do your part, there's no need to worry. If you address what you need to address, you're going to be fine. The first and foremost is the safety of the kids. Let me give you an example. To go out into an encampment, and you know it's a family out there, and to see a mother take a newspaper, wrap it up like a diaper, and then cut a hole into an H.O.P.E plastic bag, 2 holes, pull it up, and tie it together. That's the diaper, because they're afraid to reach out and get services because they don't want their child to be taken away from them. That's heartbreaking. I go home a lot in tears. I go home a lot heavy because I see this stuff. And for us to knock those barriers down and to let individuals and families know that, hey, it's okay. You know, we can get you the help that you need, and you don't have to worry about being separated or taken away from your unit. Your unit, we're taking the whole unit. We're going to get you some help. To let them know that, and like I said, it takes time, but to let them know that and to encourage them to move forward is a job. And past society has been a negative, because the first thing that happens, I got to call CPS for these kids. But you really need to let individuals know about certain programs that do hold families together and keep them together.
Gavin, do you want to say anything? The youth minister? He wasn't ready for me to call his name.
When we were at Church Under the Bridge one time, I think we were actually taking it to the streets, which sometimes it does in the street at your location. I had a girl named Abby. She's a 6th grader. And it was kind of similar experience that you were talking about. And we encouraged our students to go out and to eat among the homeless and serve the homeless. I always say to people who ask me, how can I help those in need, or how can I help those in homelessness? And I say, well, maybe when you give a sandwich to a homeless person that you think is in need, if the city lets you give that sandwich away, but if you're not allowed to eat the sandwich, then the relationship's the most important thing. And this student came up and she went up to this man, and he was a big guy, right? She was kind of nervous, and she walked up to him, and all she said was, "Do you want a drink of water?" That's all she said. And he said yes. And she started pouring in the water, and a 20-minute conversation took place. And that was with a 6-year-old girl. What about us? Like when we go up to somebody, right, Ron, in this stuff, and when we go up to them, the relationship, and we've said this multiple times, can change their life. So don't be afraid to look past the insecurities or your judgments. And that's what we need to teach our youth. That nervousness we've all felt when we're at the side of the road and somebody's asking us for money. We're really not afraid to give away our dollar. Dollar is easy to give. We're really afraid to make eye contact. And that's what we need to teach our youth. And so I really encourage our students to dive full head of steam into this relationship with people that might be a lot different than them. And that's not just the homeless. That can be about race or any other issue surrounding our community. And I think that's the most important thing we can teach our youth, at least in the way I do, in the role I have. And I think that applies to adults as well. Because we're afraid to be vulnerable. We're truly afraid to be vulnerable with our homeless friends or with our unhoused neighbors. And if we're vulnerable and not just, we sometimes see charity as hierarchical. We're the giver, they're the taker. It's just like this hierarchy, but really it's horizontal. We're all in different places and have different issues. And so if we see that way, then we're able to transform change. Transformation happens through relationship, not through a dollar bill or even, to be fair, a sandwich. But it's through love, and that's the most important catalyst. And that's what we try to teach our youth from the very, very, very early age.
I got 3 little girls, 7 years old, man, and I can't go anywhere without them saying, "Daddy, you gonna stop and help them? You gonna give them something?" Yeah, like you said, it starts early, and if you're teaching them early, then it'll resonate later on in life. And the more we have doing the footwork and the hard work, the more we can stay on top of, this homeless issue and whatnot, and give people some hope.
So I was talking to my wife the other day, and it sounds like it's off topic, but I'm going somewhere. I was talking to my wife the other day, and I had mentioned, so I went to Sam Houston High School. Any Cherokees or Hurricanes in the room? No Cherokees? Man, where is my squad at? So I was telling her that, we had to wear uniforms, right? So some kids that would wear the polo, the actual polo things, and a lot of us would wear the chaps that could have had a polo shirt, the generic polo shirts. Thank you, Mel. And I told her, it was kind of embarrassing when you had to wear the generic clothes. I mean, most of us are wearing them anyway, but, the kid with the nautical is going to look at you crazy. I can't imagine self-identifying as a homeless person when I'm a student, when I'm a high school student. You shun away from just wearing something that's cheap, but being homeless is a totally other level. Now, to add on to that, and you mentioned it a second ago, Bill, and we're going to talk about this, being LGBTQ, being part of that community in addition to being homeless. Go for it.
Well, I just want to highlight wonderful program that we have in our community that's located over at the Haven for Hope, called Thrive Youth Facility. And there are, I think, 15 transgender kids over there. All of them, if you talk to them, have their own unique and interesting story. But if you interact with them, you'll find that there's not much difference between them and you. Their sexual orientation, their gender identity is different, but their thought processes, the things that make them happy are the same things that make you and I happy. Now, I will admit to being, as a young man, homophobic, and I'm actually very, very ashamed of that period of my time. But in my maturity, I've found that people are people, regardless of their religion, their race, their gender identification, and we have a faith-based community that sometimes is biased against those kinds of choices or those kinds of identities too. That when we ask for faith-based support, we've got to also understand the value system that not all of us share. So that's going to be a difficult issue. Now, I may have shared this before, but Thrive just got a, Jade helped me, it's a $350,000 HUD grant in part of our competition, and that $350,000 will go towards helping those LGBT identified kids gain housing for up to 2 years through the HUD grant. If you're not engaged, if you are in the LGBT community, I would suggest to you that you take a look at Thrive or some of the other LGBT-oriented organizations in the community, because they need your support. All the HUD money comes with a match requirement of up to 25%, of 25% of the grant. So Thrive has to raise, either in kind or in cash, $85,000, and they're relatively very small, well, they are a very small organization. Another success story in this arena is the COC was successful in competing, I think, for about $200,000 for HIV and AIDS sufferers, for housing dollars for those populations. So I don't know how far you wanted me to go on this. I don't have statistics on the LGBT, but if you look at the national statistics, about 40% of the youth experiencing homelessness are identified as LGBT. In the South, it's over 50%. And one other really sad statistic, if you see a young, well, I think, Ron, help me out, 80% of females in homelessness are raped. So if you see a young female with need help, and she's in the 17 to 22 year age group, it's a good possibility if she hasn't already been raped, she will be in the next few days. And the other good possibility, and maybe Monty can talk to this, is that she will be trafficked in some way, either as a panhandler or in some other more abusive way.
Yeah, and as a faith-based community leader, I'm ashamed by sometimes churches use the opportunity of outreach to have a theological view about something like the LGBT community. Poverty is a theological issue when it comes to poverty itself, but to use poverty to stand on another theological view and use that is wrong. We are all equal in the eyes of God, and this outreach, whether gay, straight, black, white, anything in between. And so the churches need to realize that their outreach is not a theological pedestal. Their only theological concern should be the life and well-being of each and every person who's made in the image of God. So keep educating your faith leaders. If they somehow use that, I would challenge them.
Can I tap right quick on what, when we opened up the Thrive dorm, I I'm the pastor over at Haven for Hope, and all I got was, Pastor Brown, what are you going to do about it? I said, what do you mean what I'm going to do about it? I'm going to love them. I'm going to welcome them with open arms. I'm going to preach the word of God. They're going to know there's a lot of love in this service, and they are welcome. They are wonderful individuals. I've been blessed by a lot of them coming into the service and being a part of the service. And I just want to share something with you that I shared with Brian. Since we've opened that dorm up, it's been about a year now, hasn't it, Jay? 5 individuals have come to me and told me that they have changed their lifestyle from listening and being a part of the word. And all I do is preach love. I'm not there to beat you down. I'm not there to hellfire and brimstone you. I'm there to lift you up as Jesus would lift you up and show you love, period. Yeah, I had those questions come to me because of me being a United Methodist pastor. I love everybody. Everybody. So, you know, if we just exude love and not look at who they are, what color they are, how they wear their clothes, how they go about their lifestyle, the bottom line is that they're homeless and they need our help.
And that's the approach that we take across the board. Ron and I work hand in hand out there in the field. We're both wearing our work clothes. This is how we go out there. I got out of the uniform a year ago to go out and to talk to people because I don't want to be intimidating. I'm intimidating by my size alone, you know, just walking up to somebody. You know, both of us, Ron and I both, we're both over 6 foot. You see us coming at you, you think, oh boy, what am I going to do? Big guys. So it's just having the mentality of love. I always preach that I'm still a policeman. I'm still looking for accountability, but I'm looking for compassionate accountability. Okay? From a law enforcement perspective, you know, last 100 years, the mentality was you arrest it away, you write tickets to get it away, or you move it along. Okay? And we've been doing something different this year. 2016 was a turning point in this community. And whether it's the LGBTQ or youth or being marginalized by your faith or whatever the case may be, we don't get into that. We look at you as a person, and that's how we approach you as a person. And we want to hear your story, and we want to hear what your needs are. We prioritize your needs, and we start attacking the problem based on the priority of your needs. Now, as far as, I guess, kind of the question that you asked as far as the youth and the LGBTQ is self-identifying and kind of in the school setting and everything, I just want you to understand the challenge. I mean, that's a significant challenge just alone, just the social challenge of being amongst your peers and being, you know, a middle schooler, a high schooler. I mean, that's just a pivotal time in your life to begin with. You're homeless now and you're living in a shelter and you've got all these issues going on. So there's a lot of families and a lot of youth and the LGBTQ community that's living on the Hagen campus. So the school bus shows up there about 6:45 in the morning, okay? Because all those kids are the first kids to get picked up by the bus, okay? Because then they go and pick up all the other kids, and those other kids don't know where this first group is coming from, okay? So that's how the system is designed to try to keep them anonymous, okay? And to keep their lives as private and as their own as it can be. So then guess who's the last ones to be let off the bus too? So imagine being a single parent, homeless. I've got 2 kids, you know, and I feel like I've got it together, and I feel like I'm struggling with my 2 boys, you know. I mean, it's, you know, getting up and have to be on the bus by 6:45, and then probably not coming home till after 6 o'clock in the evening, and you got homework, and you've got all your other responsibilities and everything else. I mean, it's a true struggle, but that is what the resiliency of people and the compassion that needs to be afforded to them, as far as giving them we don't give anybody a free pass, but we try to understand their situations and try to we're not going to be able to walk in their shoes, but we can at least walk alongside them and do the best we can.
So, last question. I don't like doing things like this without leaving with some marching orders. So I'm going to go by each one of you, and we can start with you, Melody. What can neighborhoods do? And not just neighborhoods, but neighbors, residents, citizens. Whether you have a neighborhood association or not, what can we do to solve this problem?
I think it's a lot of what we've already talked about this evening, and that's, you know, reaching. So one, you know, being accepting and, you know, understand. You know, I think it works both ways. I think so. We have to understand that a neighborhood has a quality of life. They want to live in a peaceful setting, and sometimes, you know, the homeless traffic or the things that are happening in the neighborhood are disturbing that. And so I think one is we have to understand that as providers, but at the same time we're asking that the neighborhoods try to empathize, understand what is happening in the lives of the homeless, and offer the help that Brian is asking for and this panel is asking for, to provide those services and also provide ideas. I mean, I think we've talked about a number of ideas tonight that can involve neighborhood residents and churches, and we need to act on that. And we can't do it by ourselves. There's not enough organizations and not enough churches. It really takes the entire neighborhood. And so that I think is the first part, is to accept that people don't become homeless because they're lazy or they don't have anything better to do, or it's romantic to sleep under the stars. It's not. They become homeless almost entirely because they've been traumatized at some point in their life, either through the military system, the foster care system, or abusive homes, and we have to address those issues. And so I think listening and understanding where it's coming from is really the first step for neighbors and communities to begin to provide and connect and help with that solution.
Come together as groups, communities, in your different areas. Work out what your specialty gift will be toward the cause of ending homelessness and supporting individuals out there that are in need. Come together with those special gifts to be intentional about being a part of the solution, because there's no one in this room who doesn't have anyone homeless in their family. If you think down the line, you got somebody, some cousin, some nephew, some brother or sister who's experiencing some sense of homelessness. So we need to start using our special gifts and our special tasks to be a part of the solution and work together.
As a man of faith, I believe that Jesus was homeless, that it says in Matthew that he had no place to lay his head. The foxes had their dens and the birds had their nests. And the Son of Man had no place to lay his head. And we start seeing homeless people like Jesus are in the image of God. We'll understand, like you said, Melanie, trauma care. Every homeless person has experienced trauma. That's the most important thing to remember. And that we're all responsible for treating that trauma care, not just the city, who has a tremendous burden, because sometimes we fail as citizens to see ourselves as actors and as doctors for trauma care. And then we have level 2 and level 3 all over the place. So we need to realize our role in that. And I hope that when you do find some homeless person to care for, you're doing it because you really love them, not that you're just trying to get them out of your neighborhood. I hope the city feels the same way, that they're trying to love these citizens and not just displace them to other places. And I know that's not the goal, but we really want to love, right? And so I really see that as a very important step. And that is to us to realize that each and every one of us here play a role in trauma care for the homeless. And I'll end with this. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourself. Be joyful in hope and patient in affliction. Share with people who are in need. My favorite line is this. It's 2 words. Practice hospitality.
So I think, we kind of highlighted at the very beginning of the discussion with the young lady here who said, "What can I do?" She just stepped up. She's asked the question, "What can I do?" It's like I said earlier, this is a community issue that is going to require a community solution. And as Brother Ron said, I mean, every person in this room has a gift. And whether it's big or small, it doesn't matter. I see people that are involved in many different aspects of our city, and they're on lots of different panels. But then I see other people in this room who, if they go and talk to one group, and maybe some organization that they can relate to and offer their gift to them and say, just use me. I mean, Bexar County, there's over 2 million people here, and it's not a city thing, it's not a county thing, it's not a north side, south side, east side, west side, downtown, it's a community issue. We are a community of people, and we're all living together, and we're all existing together. And we need to help each other out, and that's the bottom line. Is if every person would just connect and engage with their church to provide a service, or the service providers that are already established, and just come to them and say, I'm here. Where can you use me? What is the need in this organization? And if they don't have anything that fits your gift. Sometimes a gift is just being a body that's able to move boxes around, or to hand out water, or to hand out hygiene products, whatever the case may be. Just don't stop. I'm the scoutmaster of my son's Boy Scout troop, and we are one of my goals for the troop is to teach the boys to be service-minded, service-oriented. We do a lot of service projects for the environment, for the community, for individuals. And I try to mix it up, so we're not just doing the same thing over and over, or we're not just doing one thing. Try to instill that service mentality within them. So just my best advice is to don't let your gift sit on the shelf. Offer your gift to the community.
I think Bill and I got the tough one now because we've got all the great thinkers that have gone before us. You're thinking that, yeah, what are we going to say here? I think, I agree with what everyone has said. Raise the awareness. Be aware. Be involved. Look for a way that you can be involved. And as a man of faith, again, there's the scriptures. And Jesus says, they say, well, when have I done these things? And Jesus says, well, if you've done it to the least of these, you've done it unto me. And so, find some place that you can be involved. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It's giving somebody a cup of cold water, talking to them, loving on them, and seeing how they are, and taking time to see how you can have an impact on their life, will truly make an impact on yours. I came to Church Under the Bridge 12 years ago, invited by a friend of mine. And I got there, I'm like, oh, this is cool. Oh, this is nice. but it's not really something I thought I'd liked at the time. People didn't look like me. They certainly didn't smell like me, and I wasn't too crazy about what was going on. And the more I hung out, and I went there a few times, the more I realized I went there thinking I was going to bless them, and that was not what was happening. I was getting blessed. And then I began to hunger, not because I was doing something that I was scratching my itch, but because I knew that I was beginning to make an impact, and they were making an impact in my life. It's amazing how you think that you go out to bless somebody, but you're the one that's being blessed. And that 12 years ago, that's something I've stayed, and I imagine I'll be here till God calls me home. We get involved in our communities even with the little things. We love up, we love in, and we love out, and let God do the rest.
Thanks, Andy. We end on that.
Let you follow up, Pastor.
You know, I describe my job as a social engineering project manager. My background is more as an accountant. I worked for the IRS for 32 years. Most of that time I was a revenue agent. The last 7 years, I had the good fortune to be reassigned to an outreach program that the IRS was starting to outreach for tax credits into the low-income community, and I had the opportunity to form community coalitions and collaborations from Laredo to Brownsville to Austin. I became a complete fanatic about improving the lives of the low-income individuals. I've studied it for, I don't know, when did I first meet you, Melody? Mid-90s? Right. And Melody's been a great mentor in teaching me about systems and how systems come together, how private industry and government can work together. With that background, I would challenge you to this. You know, San Antonio has a lot of neighborhood organizations, neighborhood associations. I would challenge you to look for an opportunity to maybe engage either a faith-based organization or some other non-faith-based organization and develop a model that would work in your neighborhood to solve the problem that you see with the homeless. I assume since you're here, and I want to thank you for inviting me, that you have an interest in resolving the issue, whether you have sympathy for the homeless or you don't have sympathy. You have I see two of the greatest community Samaritans in the audience here who can help guide you on how to be an advocate for an individual homeless person. And I would challenge you to create a model in this neighborhood association that we can take and replicate in other neighborhood associations. You don't have to have a city representative. I will offer you staff support. We are engaged with virtually every major homeless service provider in the community. If we're not, we will certainly reach out and find and fill the gap that you might be entering into. But if you started here in this neighborhood association, you've already identified a chair for the subcommittee. We've got a great leader in Brian, and I would offer my support in terms of trying to find a solution to at least one homeless individual that doesn't fit the standard model we're going through that we've been trying for year after year after year. Our goal is not to treat homelessness. Our goal is to end homelessness. I think 2016, I think your neighborhood association can be a leader in this effort.
Okay, so we are at 7:40. I'm going to take 2 questions from the audience. All right. Gentleman in a hat and you, young lady. No, sir.
San Antonio, we identified the highest rate of students. I'd like to explain to I'd like to make a statement with our citizens.
Can you respect our things, please?
Excuse me.
Can you respect
No, we stayed here for public input.
I think we all want to hear the lady's question. Yes.
We all want to hear the lady's question.
Hi, everybody. How are you? Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
I am a lady of Valor Empowerment, and I have my own nonprofit. We feed people on the west side for about 2.5 years. Without participating, with helping everybody. I think it's very good what you're doing, very good. We give out food, we give out clothes, and our biggest bump in the head is our TDCJ individuals coming out of TDCJ, and they don't have nowhere to go. And we have been hitting our heads trying to open them to some sort of a halfway house or something, but we haven't been able to do it. So that's the biggest issue that I see on the west side, because I live on the west side. A lot of homelessness. I just got released from TDCJ. I don't have nowhere to go, and I don't know what to do. We offer them work resources because we're linked to the Bexar County Reentry, so we kind of help them in that area. The Workforce Commission also helps us out, but it's just the bumping on the wall of the housing. That's the only thing that's kind of, holds us back. Because we feed them, we clothe them, everybody. Not only the homeless, but everybody in general. So in hoping to get together with you, maybe we can come together in full circle. I can feed them and clothe them, and you can do this, and somebody else can do that, so we can get rid of this homelessness. There's no need for it. There's no need for it. But yeah, that was I just wanted to say that.
And if any of the panel has anything, yeah, there you go. Y'all got your own mic. I got mine.
I'm ready to jump on it, especially being the law enforcement in the room. That you bring up a very, very significant piece of the puzzle is for the individuals that have been accused of a crime. They've gone through the justice system. They have done their accountability. I mean, they have paid their debt the way the society is, but yet have they? We don't treat them that way. They come out and they've got, they feel like they have no rights, no voice. A lot of times they don't have any identification. It's been lost and everything, and it's just a insurmountable struggle to recover or to rebuild a life that was gone either by a tragic incident or a tragic decision that they made. But if they've gone in, they've done their time. So the kind of efforts that we're making now is the county has done a very good job, in my opinion, of doing building the reentry facility. They've partnered with Haven for Hope so that as they're coming out, if they identify, and then they ask them, they either self-identify or they're asked as they're exiting if they are homeless or not, if they have somewhere to go, then they will take them straight to Haven to at least allow them to have a place of safety and a place of warmth and a place where they can get clothes and food and everything right then and there. 'Cause sometimes they're coming out at 2 o'clock in the morning. Where's anybody going to go at 2 o'clock in the morning? So that is something that has happened now. And what we have developed as a service, one of the very first things, for y'all that don't know, which I'm assuming most of you do not, most of y'all have not heard of the H.O.P.E team. Am I wrong? Okay. We've been in existence for a year now. And it stands for Homeless Outreach Positive Encounters. It's my partner and I. One of the very first things that we identified, not just for that segment, but for homelessness across the board, was ID recovery. Is a significant issue. How are you going to get to work if you don't have an ID? A lot of services, how can you access the services if you cannot prove who you are? There's lots of different issues. Some services house children. So if you're a sex offender, that creates a lot of issues, and that's really one of the big ones that affects from a service program perspective that they just have to be mindful of. So we created a program where, I guess let me back up a little bit. To get a birth certificate, you need an ID. To get your ID, you need a birth certificate. To get your social security card, you need both those others. So which came first, the chicken or the egg? Am I wrong? So what we did is we went to the police department and said that this is ridiculous. We need your help. I mean, I went within my own department. And I said, look, we've got an ID section that does background checks for the community, that identifies them, that any person in the community can go and get a job with. Why can't we do the same thing for the homeless population, for the homeless community? And really, what is it costing us to do it? Not much. It's not at all. So the department and the city agreed. Well, we've got several things going on. The police department, we verify your identity through fingerprints. So you walk away from our ID section with a letter and a photo, booking photo or some other type of photo that puts your face with a name. It is certified and notarized. So with that, we take that as your identification and we can go to vital statistics and get your birth certificate, even if you're born somewhere else in the state. Okay? So now with your birth certificate in hand and this identification letter from the police department, it took a little doing, but I paved the way with DPS where they will accept that as your identification and now you can get your ID back. Okay? And then once you receive those, then we can go over to the Social Security Administration and get your Social Security card. There are other forms of identification that the Social Security Administration will accept. Currently, they will not accept our letter because it's federal policy, and we're communicating with the Social Security Administration, and I'm making efforts through Senator Cornyn's office to assist us with changing policy with that, just so that they will accept local law enforcement as a verifiable means for identification. Well, it's really ridiculous, some of the things that they accept for identification, but they won't accept the police department's verification, you know. So those are the things that we are doing, and it's for the whole homeless community, but it also goes very specific to the population that you're talking about. So we work, in fact, this is an ongoing project. My partner and I've been on the department 23 years, he's been on 24. We're meeting groups that have been around for 30 years that we never even knew existed in services. So what is part of this collaborative effort and this communication effort that is trying to be really truly established here in this community is something that is going on right now. Is what I personally have been trying to do is connect the emergency services to the homeless network providers, which don't just provide services to the homeless, they also provide to low income and other, just anybody in need. Because part of this key component here is prevention and diversion. We really haven't discussed that tonight, but that is something that's going on right now. It's definitely in the discussion, it's in the mix, and it's in the equation. We're trying to prevent and divert as well as recover. So that is what's going on right now, and it is basically just a community team effort.
I tell you, doing outreach, and when we find someone who's just been released from jail, and we hear those same stories about, I don't have any ID. I say, well, hold on a minute. We got somebody that can help you get that. So that's a great resource to help individuals dispel that, that low when they get out of jail.
Just a side note, the city really committed specific funds to us now that we're facilitating through Sarah, where we're actually able to. The additional problem is always the funding. And so the problem we saw is I can get you this letter, I can prove you are who you say you are. Now let's run over here. Well, it's over here, it's $23. Well, over here it's $11, or over there it's $16. Well, who are we going to go to? Well, let's go over to Cam and get you a check from them. They're going to cut a check, and then we're over at Chrysalis, and we're hobnobbing between all the different service providers trying to scrounge to get the funds for this. And all in the meantime, you've got the poor homeless person who's traumatized by the very nature of being homeless, you know, and homelessness in and of itself is a crisis situation, and, you know, their head's spinning, and it's overwhelming, and we're just continuing the traumatic experience. But now we've got a funding source where they come to us, and the word is getting out, and these people are coming to us. It feels like they're starting to come in droves now, but we're going to go through all that money, believe me, and then we'll come back and be asking for more.
You know, the ID recovery program, the problem you found, like, this is an issue. I mean, these are the direct issues that Martin Luther King told us to address. You know, he says in his last speech to the National Cathedral, his very last speech to the National Cathedral months before, it's all right to tell a man to lift himself up by his own bootstraps, but it's cruel and jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself up from his own bootstraps. And these are the things. We got to find the boots, you know? We got to find the IDs. Sometimes it's a home-cooked meal at Maverick Park. Sometimes it's, alert. Sometimes it's a house. Sometimes it's a teenager who's just been on the streets and she's been sex trafficked and she needs a safe family to go to. Where are the boots? We got to provide the boots. We just can't think lofty. We have to just be direct. And I love that because that is a direct response to a need that was hurting the homeless community.
So we got one more question from the crowd, and then we're going to call it a night.
So I have a question about the permanent housing. As far as I know, if you have permanent housing, if you try to get somebody in permanent housing, you give him an apartment. But you guys said before that a homeless person might not know how to clean everything and take care of it. Have you thought about tiny houses like it's done in other places? Because we could probably put for $2 million, you probably could put up 600 tiny houses, plus shower facilities, plus restaurant facilities, plus cafeteria. So I think for this price, putting 600 tiny houses for 600 people up, we cannot build apartments for this price. So are you guys actually trying to build a community of tiny houses so that we can put 600 people up right now instead of finding apartments that maybe takes the next 10 years?
Well, I can tell you that there are been initiatives, and I know that you've toured in Austin. I know Sarah's toured, I think it's Fissions and Loaves or something like that. I can speak on what's going on here. I direct a new organization called 1213 Ministries, which is based on practicing hospitality. And we just bought property to build small homes to provide the same resource. And then to train the people how to live in them and how to clean and how to keep up. Some of them have shared kitchens, some of them have shared resources, but getting people safe, small housing is a great way to do it. I think that's an initiative that many people are looking at, and I think that they can speak on what the city's doing. But I know there's nonprofit organizations looking at the model like in Austin and seeing how they can apply it here in San Antonio.
Yeah, I would just add, we have looked at the village in Austin. It's right out, it's actually not in Austin, it's right outside the city lines in the county. And I mean, I think that's one option. There has to be numerous options to solve the issue. There's so many different populations within the homeless community, and we need a lot of different solutions. And the small homes, the homes in, the place in Austin actually is a combination of small homes and trailers. And so, can trailers be an option? They have the shared resources, as you mentioned, shared bathrooms, shared kitchens. So there's just a whole really spectrum of housing that we need to look at as a solution, and so that's absolutely one of the ideas that we're exploring.
We can house 50,000 college students at UT in small spaces. I'm pretty sure we can handle 650.
All right, well, that's it, y'all. Give a round of applause for our panel tonight. Amazing. Thank you very much for attending. And thank you all for coming out, for caring enough to spend your time out here tonight. Please be safe going home. Feel free to chat here for a little bit. You got to go home. Thanks, everybody.